Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where lost moms candidly talk about their experiences with stillbirth that have left them at a total loss for words. It is through our stories that we hope to give you support, motivation, friendship, and maybe a laugh or two. But most importantly, we hope to give you light in the darkest moments of your life. I'm Catherine, a lost mom to my beautiful son Brody, who was born still at 36 weeks on January 18th, 2022. While trying to survive the sadness and find answers as to why he died, I found this community of incredible women willing to share their journey, experiences, and sometimes margaritas so that I didn't feel alone. They helped me survive, and I hope we can do the same for you. So grab some wine and some tissues as we navigate this awful world of stillbirths that has left us all at a total loss.
I want to thank you so much for willing to have this conversation.
Of course.
Your account was one of the first ones that I stumbled upon in my search for anything right after Brody died. So Brody died in January, and probably around like 2 weeks out, I was just scrambling. I'm like, I need to make sense of this. I need to connect with people who get it. And I came across your page, and it was just so incredible that you were so open and so vocal. And I just was like, I hope one day to be able to function and have hope that I can carry this grief, I can carry this sadness and pain, but do it in a way that would honor Brody. And I appreciated how vocal you were and how open you were in your journey. So I was so excited when you said you wanted to talk. I know it's probably the worst circumstances that anybody could ever connect in, but the fact that we all have each other here has made this feel like you're not so alone in this journey.
Yeah.
So I want to start off and just say, I want to hear your story. I want to hear wherever you want to start it from.
Well, before I even dive into that, I just want to say thank you for that, because hearing that I connected with one individual was the main reason why I started Stillbirth Mama Fighting for Light, just this page, and really trying to own my process of being an unapologetic mother to living and dead kids. And you touched on a really big part of like trying to find sense of this. And I don't think we ever will find sense or understanding of the why, right? There's none. There's no reason why our kids should die. And I think being just holding space for you, and I do want to recognize your tremendous efforts to being able to put together this safe space in honor of Brody. Not even a full year since his death is phenomenal. It's beyond me. There's so many of us that we grieve so differently, but this is just phenomenal. So I just wanted to kind of root and start off with that, because I want to just make sure that I'm your hype girl, giving you the designated hype on a Monday.
Thank you.
Of another grieving week. It's phenomenal. So thank you so much. And I want to just raise my TJ coffee up to you and give you a cheers to
Cheers.
you and Brody, because it's phenomenal what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I didn't know what to do with all this. I didn't know what to do with this. And my outlet was just conversations. That's the only thing that I know how to do, is have them. And I was hoping that, the conversations that I've had over the last 6 months, just about nothing, even just about anything, but knowing that it's coming from a space that they understand as a lost mom or an angel mom or somebody whose baby has passed. And I was hoping that maybe somebody who just doesn't know what to do can just listen to them and maybe pick up anything that they didn't even know they were looking for. So that's really what this space is just the platform for the moms to tell their stories that they don't really get to tell that much, especially after a certain amount of time.
Yeah. And, whether it's been a month, whether it's been 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5, 10, 20, 30, you're always going to be a parent to your child, right? And then the way that you're able to share them shifts also based on on the daily, like the environment that you're in. Usually, like for me, it's been like 5 years out, and I you heard me mention my type of grief is like unapologetic. I no longer will what I refer to as like water myself down to make others comfortable. So that makes a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but I don't care because I live in discomfort. So I'm not going to, water myself down. But, to really just kind of root us in like where I'm at here now, 5 years since TJ died. TJ was my second child, or is my second child. My first son, and it was a perfect pregnancy until it wasn't, until I went into unexpected labor at 36 and a half weeks pregnant, May 29th, 2017, and heard the horrific words that so many of us have experienced of, I'm sorry, there is no heartbeat, when I was in labor and delivery. And those words, there's no words for that. There's no words. There's no way that can sum up that moment in time and the magnitude of it. At the time, I was not aware what stillbirth was. I was not aware, even to take a few steps back. Like we didn't even know. Like my mind was, what do you mean I still have to have birth, right? Mm-hmm. So even like the basic aspects of that. And so I just want to highlight that because it's through the work that you're doing, through the work that me and a handful of other birthing partners are highlighting. Can we hopefully better prepare the birthing partner that's going through the same thing today, right? In the hospital right now, unfortunately, at 10:15 on a Monday, hearing that they have their child is dead. So what do you do next? Mm-hmm. What do you do next? And so to kind of speed some things forward, I'm Latina, and 5 years ago I didn't see anyone like me. I felt so alone, and automatically I told myself I needed to create a separate space for just myself, where I did not have to sugarcoat what I was feeling, whether it was my mom stumbling upon my Instagram page, or my sister, or my friends at that time, or my coworkers. So that's really kind of the evolution of how I broke away and had my own Instagram page called Stillbirth Mama Fighting for Light. And I have navigated in what or it's evolved in regards to what certain themes I tend to share about with the community, just based on my bandwidth at that given time. It's life work being a parent to a child that's dead. It's life work to work on yourself and to hold it every single day. For me, and because I do want to preface it, I can't speak for everyone because everyone has their different bandwidths and they do a lot to process. But for me, it is life work, and I don't refer it to healing because I will never be healed. For me personally, there will always be in every single thing that I do a big gaping hole with him missing. But with that, I really try and gear that energy of sadness to advocacy. And I know that a few of the guests that you've had have shared their children and what they've done to somewhat like parent them through advocacy. And that's, some of us that have the bandwidth are able to do that. And that's where I have channeled my efforts to really trying to be as loud as I possibly can, unapologetically, to demand change and awareness for preventable stillbirth.
So right after TJ's death, how long between you started feeling this? What did the days look like for you immediately following? And then when did you kind of spring up and say, something's got to change? You had the bandwidth for it. What did that look like?
So I really didn't have the option to. I had TJ's sister was at the time was 14 months older than he was. And so, you know, my entire family, I should have mentioned this, my entire family is from California. I'm from California, but I've been in New York for 12 years, so I consider myself a New Yorker. And so fortunately, my mom was able to fly when I was in labor, so that she was able to support us. So I did have my mom present when when TJ died. But you know, the first, you know, upon leaving the hospital, I have my little bag, because that's what I was given. I wasn't given a beautiful box, but it was a little bag. Came home and went straight to my room. I didn't really want to do anything or say anything, and that was somewhat of how the days were, the early days. I didn't really want to get out, but I had to get up because of my eldest. I had to give her a hug and acknowledge her, and process through immediately. Her brother wasn't there. So she was used to giving my belly kisses and saying, hi, TJ, given that she was so young, just hi, TJ, or TJ. And so immediately needing to process, you know, he's no longer in mommy's belly. And then where is he? Oh, he's, you know, so as gently as you can for that young of an age. So the early days, I was fortunate enough, very privileged, to be able to take a full 16 weeks off at work. So during those 16 weeks, they were really hard. My mom stayed for a few weeks, and then it was back to the somewhat of me navigating through what life looked like, supporting just my eldest now. And so the days were really heavy, and kind of the evolution of my TJ coffees have kind of come to life because of the first few days. I've always had a relationship with coffee, and I always allowed myself like one cup of coffee, like a big Starbucks coffee, when I was pregnant with TJ. And one of the days when my mom wasn't around, my husband actually brought coffee to my bedroom, and he said, you know, and I didn't want to get up. He's like, come on, it's time to get up. He brought the coffee, and he said, you know what, when you're ready, here's your coffee. And so I was in my bed, and in New York, as you can imagine, it's loud. Typically, I'm actually surprised we don't hear anything right now. But you know, our window, our bedroom door faced the street. So it would typically, you would hear like the noise from the street. And I remember that moment, just sitting in bed, hearing the street noise outside, and then just holding on to what my husband said, when you're ready, get this coffee. So for me, it was the automatic, okay, the world is still moving, even though my life is completely altered. I need to get up for him, with him. And I'm going to reclaim our coffee moments that we used to have, these beautiful moments of my morning and being excited. And so that's kind of how it's evolved to every single morning. I have what I refer to as my TJ coffee. I have, I try and be intentional and just use that as time for just like me and him, or to think that like, just to feel just rooted in memories of him. So that's kind of like my TJ coffee story, but
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. But, you know, it took some time. I connected with a few local groups, but mostly the most powerful group that I connected with was Return to Zero Hope, with Kylie Hanish. Her son, Norbert, at the time died about 13 years before TJ died.
Wow.
And so when I was in the hospital, I would start researching stillbirth, and stumbled upon her because she had put together a Return to Zero video highlighting her story, both her and her husband. And so within that first, it was probably about like 4 to 5 months in, I connected with her, and was able to attend one of her retreats. And that was really transformational for me to navigate through this crazy world of how do you parent dead and living kids, and just kind of reconnect with yourself and with your child. And that was really like, I don't like to refer things as like a turning point, but my moment of, okay, I'm gonna use my voice unapologetically. I'm gonna talk about my connection with my dead son, even though people don't realize what the hell that means, right?
Right.
And so that was kind of the beginning of it all.
What was the reaction like?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What was the connection? I mean, what was the reaction like from people maybe that you were close with, or friends or family? Or, I mean, I'm sure some people were uncomfortable, but you didn't care.
Yeah.
So,
you know, sadly, the reality for many is relationships will completely be transformed after or through, because it's not after, when your child dies. It completely changes everything. So for me, that meant my relationships with my family have really transitioned, but I have really gone through the mindset of I can't worry about their opinions of how I'm parenting, about how I'm living. People are going to make assumptions. People are going to gaslight you. You know, people are going to tell you you should do this, you should do that. But at the end of the day, the number one person that you have to honor is yourself and your child.
absolutely.
So to be a little bit more transparent, my relationships with my family and with my friends, there's some people I don't talk to any longer.
It's so interesting you said the word gaslight. I mean, it actually is a thing. It's almost like they blame you for why they are behaving a certain way, and blaming your actions as to why they are acting like they shouldn't be acting. And I think that has been the wildest thing I've experienced from people and their behaviors, was trying to make me feel like I'm doing this wrong, and there's no right or wrong way. So it's really interesting you said that. I'm sorry to hear that happened. And that's not something they tell you when you lose your child, that, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to lose really, really close relationships that you did not have any idea were going to go.
No, Catherine, like they really don't. And that's why I find it so important. I'm just beginning to talk a little bit more so about from a family perspective, because I never in my wildest dreams would have thought my family would kind of pan out the way that things work, my extended family.
Yeah.
But I can't, my phrase again, water myself, my grief, my reality down for other people. And I will be unapologetic about the way I'm living my life. I live hell. Right? It's not like it's done after a year of grieving. I'm living hell. The reality of it is it beautiful sometimes? Yeah, of course it is. But this is hell, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
You know? So
really is. So did you find that some other really incredible relationships came through and came forward?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. So I think that it's never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would be grieving on social media, that I would have relationships that would be closer than my family, than closer than people that were my best friends previous to his death. I never would have imagined it. I've connected with so many beautiful people that it's horrific that we have this commonality, but you can be a little griefy, dark humor too. And I saw one of your posts, I think it was your shared story or something like that. I'm like, yep, that makes sense. It's like some people have there's so many of us, unfortunately, right? Horrifically, because it's not unfortunate, it's horrifically. Even though we have this commonality, not all of us have the same values or the same process or the same grieving mechanisms or anything like that. So long story short, for me, my lane is to be unapologetic and then to also have dark grief humor. And so that's why I really am just so appreciative of people that give me the space to do that. So like I could have just, an awful day and I'll look at my inbox and I have like 20 different memes or something like that. So this is a note to you. Please send me memes if you find them, because I think it's hysterical. But I think it's long story short, I've had connections with people I never would have connected with if my son didn't die. But then also through that, through some of my advocacy work that I'm doing with Push for Empowered Pregnancy, I have met people from all over the place, as well as from different types of backgrounds as well, which I think is pretty special. And yeah, I'm so appreciative of the community.
Yeah, I'm going to link all of those in the caption or in the description of this so that people can find those resources as well, because they're so important. Push, I've been following for a while. And I have to ask you, because like you said you never in a million years thought you would be openly grieving on social media. And I think, and I want to ask you this, 2017 is not that long ago, but it is in the grand scheme of how we've evolved on social media. And I got to tell you, I'm the same. I never in a million years would I think I would be this open about something so horrific. But I couldn't help it. How has the scene changed since TJ first died? And now with the openness for people to talk about their grief, the acceptance of grief, the understanding, has it changed the landscape in the last 5 years?
Changed. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Like, so even from like the evolution of, like I mentioned, Kylie Hanish, Kylie talks very openly about when her son Norbert died, there was no one. So it was like, stillbirth is in the shadows, right? And over time, obviously it started, building awareness. And then 5 years ago for me, I started seeing some people talk about it. But what I didn't even share TJ's picture first openly, until maybe actually I know for a fact it was like right after his first birthday. Because it wasn't like I was embarrassed. No way am I embarrassed of my son. It was this protection that I had of not fully being ready to open him up to the world, right? Or to show him to the world, for the possibility of, at that time, like there were so many shamers. There were so many, once again, the gaslighting, right? So people that are trying to tell you should be acting this way or that, or, oh, how dare you share your dead son? It's like, my son is dead, but he was alive before he was dead, and he's adorable. I mean, hello. And
seriously,
and so one of the things that has empowered me and so many is to see other people feel that they can proudly share their children, whatever way that looks like, whatever capacity they have too. And I really, want to emphasize that, because so many of us, we process so differently. Some process through advocacy, like right front and center, and that's all that they can talk about, and that's great. Or some people might be grieving a little bit quieter, and that doesn't mean it's not as loud. So you're seeing a lot more individuals now be able to share themselves, right? Or share on their terms. I do like within the past year to see more people feel like they can be a little dark griefy humor. It makes my soul soar a little bit more, just to start seeing more of us, right? And like, I think the thing that I feel so proud about is when I connect with someone else and they say, I don't feel alone. I don't feel so much like an alien, right? I don't feel like, it's still lonely, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not as isolating,
right,
on a daily basis.
I'm happy to hear you say that you appreciate the dark humor, because I think, in a sense, you're basically just saying, I appreciate those who embrace their own way of grieving,
Hmm.
their own way of coping. We
Hmm.
are not a group that judges. We're not ones to say, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, which is crazy because right after the death of your child, you kind of go, am I weird? Am I crazy? Am I not doing this right? Am I going to get judged by my own new community on how I do
Yes.
this? And it almost is stifling, and it keeps you from ever taking one foot in front of the other and
Yeah.
continuing moving forward. So I'm so grateful that you are one of the OGs that has come out and said,
Oh
this
my
is
gosh.
okay. You're not
Thank
even, though.
you.
You're not at 5 years is yet, but still, you're one of those that's like, hey, it's okay. And you know what's okay? How you want to grieve, how you choose to
Yes.
handle this.
Yes. Catherine, I think I also do want to point, like, it goes back to life work, right? So this is, even sometimes I'm like, oh, I know I'm on someone's bad list of, a grieving parent because I use strong verbiage. For me, that's what works for me. I don't, soft verbiage for me does not resonate. So my son didn't pass,
Mhm.
he died. And
Mhm.
so things like that. I know I irk some people, but those aren't my people, and that's okay. Um, but going back to, I think I'm gonna send you one of my first like posts. I think it was 3 years. It was okay, we've been in the pandemic 3 years. Um, Dear Abby, there's some of these old school people that drive me nuts. So Dear Abby, about 3 years ago, shamed this. I think it was an aunt, or it was a parent that had someone die, and they highlighted, or someone wrote into her, oh, my aunt is taking too long to agree, or to get over the death of her son, or something like that. And Dear Abby just laid in and said, oh, they need to get a therapeutic help. Like she needs to see a therapist and get on some medication and get over it. Long story short, that's when I said, no way, I'm not going to be quiet. And that's when, 3 years ago, we started seeing more and more people. And we really demanded Dear Abby to try and have any type of recognition or remorse of like the awful things that she said. But it was like a good like 3 months, I would say, that like a lot of us were just trying to go after her. But the whole point of me even bringing that up is there's still this old world mentality of what grief should look like. And it now, we are not going to be quiet. It's like this momentum that is building. We are not going to be quiet and let the old world, the old people, the old mentality of what grief looks like to stay in a box, because we're not.
Mhm.
We're not going to be in a box anymore. No.
Yeah, and I completely see that. I completely understand that. There's no moving on from this. There's coping and moving forward in the best
Yes.
way we possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think, and tell me what you think on the flip side of that, I think there's also people who wear their grief as who they are, as their sorrow, as who they are. They identify with crushing, debilitating sadness. And that is their way of dealing with their grief. And I think trying to fix those people, that's not up to us to do that. Fix, I'm putting air quotes. We can't fix a griever. They have to choose how they want to feel. They have to choose how they want to keep moving forward. So on the flip, a lot of people say, you should be over this. You should move forward. You should get therapy. You should feel better, blah, 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 blah. I've actually experienced more of, you don't seem like you're grieving hard enough. And that has been a really interesting take on it, on this whole situation. Have you seen this as well on that flip side of
Yeah.
maybe we
Yes.
aren't sad enough because we have
Yes.
humor? Yeah.
So 100%. I mean, it goes back and forth. I think it also depends on who you are interacting with at that time, and like how you're interacting with them, right? So someone can assume someone like you. I mean, there's a handful of different assumptions people can make. Oh my gosh, she's doing this podcast and out and trying to be and being funny, because you're not trying, you are funny. You're just being yourself, right? And there can be those assumptions, similar to well, and with that, it's the assumption of people think that you should be grieving a certain way, and that's not the case. It's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
You can be out publicly and smiling and laughing and be screaming inside. So you you can be smiling and laughing and screaming inside. And that's important for people to realize. I even remind that to my husband sometimes of the or it could be also the other way around. Like you can be, sad and then also laughing in the span
Yeah.
of like a minute,
Yeah.
right? And so like most recently, explained to my husband after TJ's death, like or birthday, excuse me, in May, that I was really upset because the actual day of his birthday didn't go according to plan. And I was upset and was with his siblings and they wanted to do something else. And afterwards, I was my son was like, oh, or my husband was like, you need to try and be a little happier. I was like, who's saying I'm not happy even though I'm upset? It's like we
Yeah.
can, and sometimes you need to remind your partner, that you can hold different emotions at multiple times. And you have to remind them that you can process differently than them. Um, Not always, not everyone has that challenge, but for me, it has been pivotal for me and my husband to always remind each other that we grieve differently.
Yeah. I heard someone say that sometimes grief is inconvenient. And I thought that was really interesting that it's okay to sometimes say, I cannot grieve right now. I need to do something else. I need to go and do this, or I need to do that, whatever the reason is, and just say, I'd like to honor my grief the best way I can. And right now is not the best way to do that. And I have to save this for later. And I thought that was
Yeah.
a really interesting statement. And it may not have been from someone whose child died. It may have been from anybody who grieves, though, loved tremendously. So I take this grief advice sometimes just because I like to hear different perspectives. But I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. And, do I want to cry hysterically sometimes? Absolutely. Can I do it right at the second? Probably not sometimes,
Yeah.
So it's okay to say, Brody, I love you. I miss you. I remember you. I'm honoring you. But right now, I cannot mourn you. And you can keep moving forward. And that's okay to do that too. And to
Yeah.
find that that middle ground, that
Yeah.
balance is really helpful to say, I
Yeah.
can have my elation, my elated times, but I can have my dark down times as well, and understand and recognize both of those and honor both of those feelings. I think is really important for people to understand and to
Yeah.
not put that much pressure on you either.
No. And then I think another part of that is when you also find comfort for your best response to the individual that's saying something to you, like someone that says something to you. Oh, are you sure you're okay? Like you're not crying, right? You navigating through what your response is, right?
Yeah.
And saying it in a way that feels good for you in that moment. Because the reason why I mention that is because so much of our life after they die is people saying stuff to us constantly, constantly. And you navigate through the responses that you can provide back. And that evolves. Your responses evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm sure you have found different ways to respond back when people say that.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I mean, you got to shut it down sometimes and not,
Yeah.
don't want your coaching sometimes. And you have to do it in the
Yeah.
nicest way possible. But at some point, you just say, I'm not in the right space for this sort of advice right now, but thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because I know that we're talking about a lot of the aftermath. We're talking about the grief. We're talking about what happens next after death. You're very involved in prevention. That's
Yeah.
what push is, right? So I want to circle into that and ask, what does that look like for
Yeah.
you, and what are you advocating for right now? Because if your baby has died and you're listening, you're probably looking for answers, or you never got answers. You have no idea what could have been done, and you probably blame yourself tremendously. And this is a massive part of the aftermath of stillbirth and baby death. So I want to ask you, what are you advocating for as far as preventative measures right now?
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. So first off, there's over 23,000 stillbirth deaths a year, and that number most likely will once we finally get like the recap of the past 2 years at least, it probably is higher than 23,000 because that number was right before the pandemic. And the reason why I mentioned that is because the pandemic has really significantly affected the care of birthing partners. So what we found in our research is that a handful of stillbirths are preventable. And what that essentially means is there could have been certain practices that were in place to help prevent certain things from happening. So I found out within the past year, I was finally ready to get the data and send my pathology report out to Dr. Hy-Vee Kleiman, who's a placental specialist out in Connecticut here. And I sent him all of our data, and we found out that TJ had a small placenta. He was in the 4th percentile of his placenta. So essentially that means he was growing small and his placenta shut down. So the placenta is the lifeline, the life support for your child. And what the type of care that we have right now for a birthing partner, when you go to the hospital and you do your scans every 4 weeks or so on and so forth, they do not measure the placenta. So a small measurement called the estimated placental volume scan could have determined that he had a small placenta, and they could have acted quicker or recognized that we have to monitor the placenta and his body size every time that it came in. Unfortunately, during my care, I was not informed the importance of kick counting as well. So I wasn't aware that there should have been additional monitoring that I should have done. So what we have found is through Dr. Hy-Vee Kleiman and a handful of different doctors that we have partnered with, that we have to, as a country, push for awareness on preventable stillbirth. So that's really educating our birthing partners of kick counting. So we've partnered with Count the Kicks, which is a fantastic charity as well, where it's a free app that you can download and you can use that in your pregnancy to determine what your child's normal is. And of course, unfortunately, right now, we're most likely talking to people that have experienced child death of some sort. So that wouldn't be very helpful to talk about kick counts, but maybe that's something for a subsequent pregnancy that we highly recommend. But really the big piece of trying to have a better understanding of why your child possibly died could help you in the subsequent pregnancies if you were interested in pursuing that route, or if you can. So I highly, highly, highly recommend Dr. Hy-Vee to have some answers. He has helped so many of us find reasons to why our children died, because most instances we were not given the why behind why our child died. And I'll make sure to give you all of his information so that you can link it in the notes as well.
I actually have it. I sent Brody's to Dr. Kleiman too. I got results back from wherever they sent his placenta from the hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy you mentioned him. And sent him to Dr. Kleiman and said, I need more answers. And it came back that Brody's placenta was in the 2nd percentile. And I had absolutely no idea that was a thing.
No idea.
Zero. And
correct. We don't even know.
And the counting of the kicks, they don't ask you in your appointments. So I was just researching and found that 10 kicks an hour is actually not that accurate. It should be the characteristic kicks of your baby. And if they change, you need to go and ask some more questions. And
100%.
It's unbelievable to me that this is not part of a conversation before this happens. And we did the meeting with Dr. Kleiman. And I want to ask you something, because when I tell people about this conversation I had with him and getting, and I'm putting air quotes again, answers as to what was associated. And they always use the word associated. They won't say cause for some reason, associated with Brody's death. People usually ask me, do you regret getting answers? So how did you feel about getting such a specific reason or cause of or association with TJ's death?
It's a really great question. So it took me, I do want to preface it, it took me 4.5 years to reach out to him. 4.5 years. I wasn't ready at the time. At the time, we did have our pathology reports looked at the specialists at the hospital, but we didn't find any answers. She just said, unfortunately, this happens. And it just didn't feel right to hear that. At that time, I registered that, but it just didn't feel right. And now after that, 4.5 years later, receiving that information, it made me angry. It made me sad. It made me angry. And then it shifted me to really find the way to just, I had to make sure to amplify, measure the placenta as much as we can. Measure the Placenta is a group that works very intimately with Dr. Kleiman to help create that further awareness of the estimated placental volume scan and to really just provide information for birthing partners so that they can be supported before they have any type of loss.
Do you think that we in our lifetimes will see anything change as far as ACOG and getting it to be kind of standard procedure for during pregnancy?
I think we've had we meaning Push. So let me take a few steps back. So we at Push, our group it's a charity of all volunteers. So I am one of the co-directors of communication. And we have a handful of different birthing partners that are we're tired and we're demanding change. That's really what it comes down to. We're demanding change and accountability from ACOG. So there's 3 of our team leads have had a few conversations with ACOG. It's taking a while for them to understand. They understand the severity of 23,000 stillbirth deaths. But the big change or the big challenge right now that they see is understanding what to do next with the information that is received from the estimated placental volume scan. Dr. Harvey Kleiman he is continuing to work with us and measure the placenta to continue giving them data, continue giving them all of his research. Which is so essential to saying, okay, if you don't believe us, this is the data. This is what it looks like right now. This is what our recommendation is after from a process. We're also seeing that this past year, 3 months ago, we launched our first rainbow clinic here in Metro New York that was partnered through Push. So we were able to partner with Mount Sinai to launch the first ever rainbow clinic that is dedicated at decreasing the stillbirth rates across the country. So that's pretty phenomenal. So that in my mind is change. Mm-hmm. That clinic itself is working hand in hand with Dr. Kleiman to make sure that those are the processes that they take. So if we start seeing more and more doctors and practices say, ACOG, they're going to go over here. If they're not going to operate as quickly as we need to, we will take it upon ourselves to move forward and implement the change. So we are seeing change. It's just not at a fast pace. But ACOG, it will happen. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of when.
Well, I've noticed that it's becoming a little bit national news coverage lately. Yes. I've seen several mainstream media outlets talking about it, and you were just featured in USA Today, right?
Yes, thank you so
Oh my
much.
gosh, I was so excited about
I
that.
should say that I have like a few lines, but my counterparts were all featured. There's about six of us that were in that article, and then also on their partner network, Lohan, had some others. So yeah, thank you for recognizing that.
How did that come about? Did they approach you about that?
So we have yes so yes. So we have a director of PR, and so she happened to connect with one of the journalists and was telling them about the epidemic that is stillbirth, and provided more information on Dr. Harvey Kleiman and what he's doing, and shared a little bit more about background about our families, and they were interested in taking a story and making a story about just stillbirth awareness as a whole in New York. And this is about the third or fourth article that we have connected with. And I think to the whole point, Catherine, is we now are starting to see more networks talk about stillbirth, which is essential to address the epidemic that is stillbirth and to start seeing change.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being somebody who's leading and championing this. It's so important. I mean, I know even people, myself included, I didn't know stillbirth was a thing. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And going through pregnancy, never once thought it was a potential outcome, let alone that there's so many different factors that contribute to it. I mean, ticking off, things like cord accidents and small placenta is probably, I think, was one of the biggest ones that contribute.
Yes.
And how can we be looking at all of this and saying, oh, oops, you're one of six or 160, you're
Yes.
one of 160. I'm like, that's a really big number, guys. Is it just
Yeah.
me?
That drives me crazy. It's
It's
bigger than
insane.
SIDS. It's bigger than fires. It's bigger, when you take it, bigger than drownings. And so like when you start peeling back the onion, it is the number one cause of death. And so that's why it's like you can't look away from that. You
Now, let
can't.
me ask you something, and I don't know, but do you feel that you've gotten any pushback for trying to dig and get answers and change? Because I have been told
Yeah.
that stillbirth is an actual mistake that should never have happened.
Yeah.
And they want to cover their tracks sometimes, in that you may never get answers because they don't want you to know the answers. Do you feel there's
Yes.
some level of that?
Yes.
Oof.
Yes. Yeah.
Oof.
And then there's a lot of different layers to this. I wish it was just I wish we could address it just head on, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. You have some well-known practitioners that refuse to see estimated placental volume scan, for instance, as a um, as an area that could potentially be life-saving.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I know, isn't that crazy?
I
Yeah. So
just,
that's why it's the more that we're able to have doctors, like two of our board members, Dr. Florescu and Dr. Harvey, actually three, and then Dr. Stone at Mount Sinai, to be able to do these scans and show people the results, the life-saving results. It's essential for that. But it gets me angry. It gets all of us, a handful of us, fired up when we hear, "Oh, that's not enough information. We need more data." It drives us nuts. I
yeah,
mean, it
it
could
really
potentially
does.
save more, right?
It really could. So let me ask you, if someone approaches you and says, how do I get involved? How can I
Thank you
help?
for asking.
What do you tell them?
So I would say we always need help. So and help can be something as easy as resharing a post. And I do want to emphasize that, because the bandwidth as a griever is, just, it depends on a daily basis. It can change up, all the time. So even something as simple as go to pushpregnancy.com or at on Instagram, as well as our Still Counts page, and follow us. That's the first way to help. Then the second part is to look and engage with us and like posts and share them as you feel they resonate. And then the third, if you would like to actually help with any projects that we may have, you can actually just go on to pushpregnancy.com, and there's actually a little icon that you can click as like to join us as a change maker. And we have about 8 different directors that we're all pulled in so many different directions of working on all these different projects, and we need help because we're doing this all on top of, our jobs or our life. And so please go there. And when in doubt, you can always just send me a message and I will connect you to the right person.
Absolutely. I'm gonna post all of those links, all of those websites in the description of this podcast so you guys can find where to go. And I could talk to you forever, but I'm sure this is just the first of many conversations. But
it definitely is.
I just want to one more question ask you. I know a lot of people who have experienced baby death have reached out to you. What do you typically say, or what would you want to leave the listener with at this moment, whether it's how to cope or how to do day to day, or just any piece of anything that you would want to leave them with?
I think that the biggest thing is, your love is eternal, and you are the one that can determine what your love looks like and share how loud you want to share that out, right? So you don't have to share your child as loud as the other griever, right? You're the one that can determine that. And you should never feel like you have to water yourself down. That's my favorite quote. Don't water yourself down. Please don't. And you can be unapologetic about your grief. And the one last thing I do want to invite anyone that has the capacity is in October 15th of this year, we're going to have what we refer to as the big push out in DC. So for those that can travel to DC, or who would like to be to host their own little event in your city, we are going to have a big walk called the Big Push, and we're going to hopefully walk around with 23,000 strollers and demand change and accountability at the front steps of the Capitol. So we'll be there.
Such a big thing. And if you're not in the DC area and can't travel, check your local area. We have one here in Atlanta as well. It's National Stillbirth and Infant Loss Awareness Day is the 15th, but the entire month is to recognize the babies that have died. And there's probably something going on. And if you want some help figuring out how to get it together, ask one of us, or contact Domenique and see what you could do in your own local community. Again, if you can and you have the bandwidth for that. But there are resources to give you some direction on if it's something that you'd like to do or something that you'd like to participate in. And I can't thank you enough for not only being such a voice for all of us and for starting these movements and championing all these change and just all the wonderful words that you have. And I appreciate you being so open and having just a conversation. And I hope that we can continue this conversation.
Of course. I can talk for days. We love talking about our kids. So
really do. And you're in trouble now because I will send you really ridiculous memes.
I expect those memes.
Y'all send us memes.
The memes get us by, right?
That's all for this episode of the At a Total Loss podcast. If you'd like to help other lost moms benefit from our stories, please share, rate, and comment wherever you are listening. Thank you for being the strong mama that you are. And remember, when things have you at a total loss, we're here to help you find the light in the darkness. Take care, lost moms.